Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, things adjacent. Please remember to like the video and to make sure that you are still subscribed. This from phys.org from January 10th, titled Everything is Lost, Life on the Edge of Brahmaputra. India is grappling with a water crisis on all fronts as global warming creates something. Once a vast river island in the heart of the Brahmaputra, now Majuli's days are numbered. Experts warn it may disappear entirely by 2040 as ever more violent flooding swells the river, wreaking havoc on the lives of those that live along its banks. Millions rely on the vast waterway which rises in Tibet and runs some 2,900 kilometers through the Himalayas to the Bay of Bengal for their livelihoods. But climate change means the deluge from the annual monsoon is increasingly extreme. Human mismanagement is exacerbating the problem, and the Majuli's 170,000 islanders, the future looks bleak. The floodwaters are submerging more and more areas of the island and for longer periods, wrecking crops and rendering life infertile. The inhabitants, mostly indigenous Mishings tribespeople who follow a unique offshoot of Hinduism, move to higher ground with their animals when the rains come, but soon there may be no place for them to migrate up to. We love the river, but we know it will one day devour all of our land. We can only pray that Brahmaputra relents and we can live in harmony like generations before us, says Sunil Mili, a farmer who grows mustard and rice. India is grappling with a water crisis on all fronts as global warming creates more extreme weather and poor environmental planning puts millions at risk. The nation is struggling to cope with multiple crises from severe drought as well as heavy flooding and rising sea and river levels, all leading to chronic water shortages. The water crisis is expected to worsen as the country's population is set to grow to about 1.6 billion by 2050, says Pradeep Purandari, a former professor with the Water and Land Management Institute. Swept away, Majuli, famed for its historic 16th century monasteries, was 1,250 square kilometers in 1890. But the Brahmaputra's fast-flowing waters have eaten away at it. Now just 515 square kilometers remain. Wow, less than half. And the island could disappear entirely in the next 15 to 20 years, according to Majuli Island Protection and Development Council, a local nonprofit agency. It is a reality that Nandiram Payang knows all too well. His entire village was swept away by the Brahmaputra. Water levels already, floods and rising water levels already putting people out of their homes and taking land away. We had our houses, farms, and cattle in our village, but we were content and happy. But in 2007, the river came and took everything away. The widower recalls, now we do cultivation in other people's fields, and we need to give them half the harvest. The 55-year-old tells AFP, the creases on his weather-beaten forehead deepening. Villagers began to leave in the mid-20th century, but recently it has become an exodus. Some 10,000 families have been displaced in the last 12 years, according to local officials. Named after the son of the Hindu deity Brahma, the river is considered sacred, and people place offerings of earthen lamps and flowers to appease it. Every year, the Brahmaputra is getting bigger. It is losing its depth and is getting wider. It is attacking the banks and eroding our land continually, said Mitu Katamiyar, a local journalist. Experts say fast melting Himalayan glaciers, 2/3 of which could disappear by 2100, according to a major report in February, caused by global warming, are a major culprit for the heavy flooding. The Brahmaputra and many of India's other major rivers are reliant on snow and ice from the mountains, and while an increase in melting means more water in the short term, its arrival is uncontrolled and intense. Catastrophe. Climate change has made the monsoons more unpredictable. They come later, the deluges are heavier, but overall total rainfall has dropped. There are sudden showers of high intensity, which the region is not used to, which has led to catastrophe, says Siruchi Abadwal, Senior Fellow, Earth Science and Climate Change at the Energy and Resources Institute. Such occurrences may increase in the coming years, she explained, adding the glacier melt will initially lead to fuller rivers and a surplus of water. There are few provisions in place to harness or conserve water when there's an abundance, and a lack of proper management when there's too little, leaving people still facing water shortages. Water management, governance, and regulation is lacking at the national level. Once water is available, it should be used efficiently and in an equitable manner, Purandari says. He adds that while harvesting rainwater is one solution, it's vital that industry, agriculture, and communities look at the way they use and can conserve water now. Prime Minister Narendra Modi recently created the Ministry of Jal Shakti, dedicated to looking at ways to better manage water resources, and tackles everything from access to clean drinking water to flood management. Human encroachment along the river has also added to the problem. More people live in the Brahmaputra Valley than ever before, and protective wetlands have been destroyed, making way for homes and villages. Sound familiar? Environmental expert Himanshu Thakkar says hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent building concrete river embankments in a bid to mitigate flooding along the Indus. This has instead exacerbated the situation by inadvertently speeding up the flow of the river, making it more dangerous when water levels are high. Thakkar says the Brahmaputra is a flood-prone river, but we are worsening the situation. More areas and people feeling the effects of climate change. This is an interesting story out of Oregon. I don't know if I'm going to read the entire thing, but Facebook riles. This is from techexplore.com. Facebook riles tiny Oregon town with plan for undersea cable. A battle playing out in Oregon is pitting residents of a tiny coastal town with no stoplights or cell phone service against one of the world's biggest tech companies. Locals in Tierra del Mar are trying to stop Facebook from using property in their quiet community to build a landing spot for an undersea cable with connecting America with Asia. Representatives of the social media giant say Tierra del Mar is one of the few places on the U.S. West Coast suitable for the ultra-high-speed cable. It will link multiple U.S. locations, including Facebook's huge data center in the central Oregon town of Prineville, with Japan and the Philippines, and will help meet an increasing demand for internet services worldwide, the company says. What locals say the vibrations from drilling to bring the submarine cable ashore in this village of some 200 houses might damage home foundations and septic systems. They also point out that Tierra del Mar, a raid along a pristine beach, is zoned residential. If the county and state allow the project, they say more commercial ventures will come calling. This is a huge precedent. Once you open the shores to these companies coming anywhere they want to, Oregon's coast is pretty much wide open season. Resident Patricia Rogers told county officials, in written remarks. The three-member Tillamook County Board of Commissioners began hearing final testimony on the application Thursday. All three commissioners told the county attorney they used Facebook, but that it wouldn't sway their deliberations. They were expected to vote on the project later in the day. Tierra del Mar, 65 miles southwest of Portland, is home to a mix of professionals and retirees who share a love of the unspoiled beach that is fringed with coastal pines and the deer, bald eagles, and rare seabirds that inhabit the area. It has two businesses, a rock shop and an antique store, and no cell service, apparently because providers can't consider it profitable enough. Well, you want to know where to get completely away from civilization? This sounds like a good place to me. And I'm not going to read any more of this, but I hope that they do block this project. the more communities can do, can stand up to stuff like this, the more of a precedent it sets for people to protect their land and nature itself from the the ever ever deepening encroachment of civilization upon every single part of nature that it can possibly touch. And lastly, in this video, this is from The Guardian from January 5th. Britons reach Africans' annual carbon emissions in just 2 weeks. Kind of news that people already know, that developed countries just use far and away more resources and more fossil fuels in their daily lives, more water, more, where did I read somewhere about what Americans use, what one person in America uses, on average, their water consumption is just off the charts. It's like 150 gallons. I'm like, 150 gallons a day. I'm trying to think, like, what possibly would you use 150 gallons of water for a day? Like, that's just incredible to me, but that seems incredibly high to me. But still, even if it were 50 gallons a day, that still sounds really high to me. But, people in developed countries use, this many resources, and people in undeveloped countries use this many resources. Did you guys get that? That was scientific, by the way. Britons reach... anyways, I read that. Research for Oxfam shows inequality between footprints of people in UK and in countries including Rwanda, Ethiopia, and Malawi. The average British person will have emitted more carbon dioxide in the first 2 weeks of this year than a citizen of any one of 7 African nations does in an entire year. This is the key finding of an Oxfam project published on Sunday, which discovered that someone in the UK will take just 5 days to emit the same carbon as someone in Rwanda does in a year. And by next Sunday, January 12th, the average Briton's emissions will have overtaken the annual per capita emissions of a further 6 African countries: Madagascar, Malawi, Ethiopia, Uganda, Guinea, and Burkina Faso. The study revealed that annual emissions of carbon dioxide per head of population is 0.09 tons in Rwanda, 0.19 in Malawi, 0.25 in Burkina Faso. Further up the scale, it was found that Nigeria emits 0.49 or half a ton of carbon per person every year, while in India the figure is 1.65. These figures compare with a global average of 4.7 tons per person a year. In Britain, that figure is 8.3. Danny Sriskandarajah, the chief executive of Oxfam GB, described the scale of global inequality revealed by the study as staggering. It's a shock to realize that in just a few days, our high carbon lifestyles here in the UK produce the same emissions as the annual footprint of people in some poor countries. However, the encouraging thing is that the willingness of the British public to take action, if one can be encouraged by that, at least, action in words, at least. This view is supported by the result of the YouGov poll carried out for Oxfam and also published on Sunday. It shows that 61% of people in Britain want the government to do more to address the climate emergency. Most respondents also say they would be willing to act to reduce their own carbon footprints. The poll found that 55% of Britons say they worry about the impact of global heating as much, and as many as 79% say they were likely to take one of a number of actions to reduce their carbon footprint. Responses range from 79% of people who said they were likely to recycle more, down to 38% who were likely to change their diet, such as eating less meat or dairy. More than two-thirds, 68%, said they were likely to use energy-efficient products or utility providers, okay, and almost half to limit their air travel or buy ethically made or secondhand products. Okay, that's good. Half is good. Half is good. Just as large numbers of the public are resolving to reduce their carbon footprint, we need a bold New Year's resolution Sorry. From the Prime Minister to get us on track to net zero emissions. I'm sorry. Woo. That's funny. Much earlier than the current 2050 deadline, says Sriskandarajah. As the UK government gets ready to host global climate talks later this year, it needs to show that it is deadly serious about leading the fight against climate change. Maybe they will. Maybe they will. Maybe they will. Maybe they will. Who knows? That is all I have for you in this video. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.